Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're not just discussing philosophy, we're getting ready to handle a live grenade.
That's a good way to put it.
One aimed right at our most basic assumptions about pretty much everything. We are diving into Friedrich Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil.
And it really is a text that argues that everything you think of as good or true is, well, it's built on centuries of prejudice.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to get a really immediate kind of hard-edged feel for Nietzsche's skepticism. He's trying to dig up the foundations of Western thought.
He really is. He's trying to clear the ground for what he calls a philosophy of the future. And to do that, he has to show you that the philosophical house you live in is maybe built on self-deception more than on solid ground.
And he does not waste any time. He starts right at the top, questioning the one thing we all just accept as a virtue, the will to truth.
Right. We all assume that seeking knowledge is just good. It's moral. It's necessary.
But Nietzsche just stops everything and asks, why? He puts this really shocking question out there. Suppose we want truth. Why not rather untruth and uncertainty, even ignorance?
It's the ultimate philosophical gut check. You know, other philosophers ask, how do we find truth? Nietzsche steps back and asks, what's the value of our desire for truth in the first place?
Is it even a good thing to want?
Is it maybe a weakness? He forces you to consider that maybe, just maybe, our need for certainty is a psychological crutch, that life itself might depend on fictions.
Okay, so if he's going after the value of truth itself, he has to start with the tools we use to organize it. So what's the first prejudice he attacks?
He goes straight for dualism, the bedrock of, well, everything. He says that metaphysicians, for centuries, all share this fundamental faith in opposite values.
Good versus evil, true versus false.
Selfless versus selfish, mind versus body.
Yeah.
Our whole world is structured around these pairs.
Our laws, our morality, everything.
Exactly. And Nietzsche points out the really stunning thing. It never seemed to occur to these thinkers to doubt whether these opposites even exist.
Or if they're just, two sides of the same coin.
Precisely. Are they really opposites, or is it just a convenient simplification? He argues that these distinctions are just foreground estimates, provisional perspective.
He has that great visual for it, doesn't he?
He does. He says we're viewing things from some nook, perhaps from below frog perspective, as it were.
Right, so we're mistaking the frog's view from the mud for the eagle's view from the sky, for objective reality.
Exactly. And so he asks, what if we tried to get that higher perspective? What if we looked down on life? What would we see then?
Because if deception isn't the opposite of truth, what is it?
He offers this completely radical reversal. He suggests that from that higher view, a higher and more fundamental value for life might have to be ascribed to deception, selfishness, and lust.
Okay, hold on. If we embrace deception and selfishness, how does anything work? How does a society, or even just an organism, hold together? Isn't that just total chaos?
And that's the resistance he expects. But he's not talking about lying on your taxes. He's saying that for life to exist, for an organism to thrive, it has to be partial. It has to prefer its own existence. It has to simplify reality in a way that serves it.
So these perspective estimates and appearances that he talks about, they aren't errors.
They are conditions of life. They're necessary functions. To be alive is to estimate, to prefer, to be, in a sense, unjust.
Wow. So our morality is just a survival tool that simplifies a messy world, which I guess leads into his next big philosophy itself.
Yes. He basically says, forget the logical arguments for a second and look at the person writing them.
The ultimate ad hominem attack.
You could see it that way, but for him, it's the core truth. He says every great philosophy so far has been the personal confession of its author and a kind of involuntary and unconscious memoir.
So when I'm reading Plato's Republic, I shouldn't be asking, is this a just society? I should be asking,
what psychological need drove Plato to invent this system?
Exactly. Nietzsche argues the real germ of life in a philosophy is its moral or immoral intentions.
So to understand a philosophy, you have to ask, at what morality does he aim?
That's his key.
Yeah.
He completely dismisses the idea that philosophy comes from some pure, detached drive to knowledge.
So if it's not the drive to knowledge, what is it? What's actually driving the bus?
It's the will to power. Or rather, the various drives within a person, each with its own will to power. He says every drive, whether it's fear or ambition or vanity, uses understanding and misunderstanding as a mere instrument. Every drive wants to be the master.
And it attempts to philosophize in that spirit.
That's the line. The philosophy is just the drive wearing a very respectable mask.
And he gives some incredible examples of this, right? Starting with Kant.
Oh, yes. Kant and his categorical imperative, act in a way that your action could become a universal law. It's the ultimate impersonal rule.
Right. Nietzsche just scoffs at this. He calls it the stiff and decorous tartuffery of old moralists.
Tartuffery. That's a great word. It means what, like a kind of pious hypocrisy?
It is. He's saying Kant, who was personally obsessed with rigid routine, was basically dressing up his own private psychological need for order and calling it universal moral law. It wasn't a discovery, it was a defense mechanism.
And he does something similar with Spinoza, right? With the whole mathematical form thing.
Yes, Spinoza built his ethics like a geometry, textbook axioms, theorems, the whole thing. It's meant to look objective, unassailable, but Nietzsche sees this mathematical form as a mail and mask.
Armor.
Exactly, armor that betrays Spinoza's personal timidity and vulnerability. The abstract system is there to protect a very fragile person.
Okay, so philosophy is just the will to power in a fancy dress. That brings us to the moral systems these philosophers build. Let's start with the Stoics. Live according to nature.
Sounds so wise, doesn't it? So harmonious. But Nietzsche just says, which nature? He points out that actual nature is wasteful beyond measure, indifferent beyond measure, without purposes and consideration. It's chaotic and brutal.
So if you try to live according to that, you'd just stop living, or at least stop caring.
You'd cease to be a living, striving thing. For Nietzsche, life is estimating, preferring, being unjust, being limited. It requires making choices and asserting value. To try and be one with nature is to give up on life itself.
And that assertion of value, that brings us back to what he sees as the core of philosophy, this tyrannical drive.
He calls it the most spiritual will to power, a tyrannical drive itself seeking the creation of the world. Philosophy isn't just about observing the world, it's about imposing an order, a meaning onto it. It's a command.
And if philosophy is a command, a will, then what about the concept at the heart of all moral responsibility? Free will.
He has a lot of fun with that one. He basically dismisses freedom of the will as a kind of intellectual vanity. The desire to be the causa sui, the cause of oneself.
The Munchausen analogy. Pulling yourself out of the swamp by your own hair.
It's a logical impossibility. You can't be the author of your own existence. He says the whole concept was invented so that we could feel responsible, so we could have guilt and punishment and pride. It serves a moral prejudice.
But then what about the opposite? What about pure determinism? Or the unfree will?
He throws that out too. And this is so critical. He says both are a misuse of concepts. For him, cause and effect are just conventional fictions for the purpose of designation and communication.
Wait, not for explanation?
Not for explanation. That's the bombshell.
So all of science, all of physics.
He would say it's a useful mythology. We impose a simple A leads to B framework on reality because it helps us function. But in itself, in reality, there's no such chain. There's just a web of forces.
That is a staggering thought. It undermines everything. So if both free will and causality are fictions, what does psychology become?
Well, he says traditional psychology is useless because it's stuck in moral prejudices and fears. It refuses to look at what really drives us. He calls for a new psychology, understood as the doctrine of the development of the will to power.
A psychology that has to accept what we call vices.
It has to do more than accept them. It has to see drives like hatred, envy, covetousness, and the lust to rule as essential conditions of life.
Not sins, but fuel.
Fuel for enhancement. He argues they must be present and even enhanced if life itself is to be enhanced.
Okay, so if envy and lust are the engines of life, then our whole way of judging actions has to be wrong.
Completely backward. He says the real value of an action lies in what is unintentional in it, the raw, unconscious drive behind it. Everything we are conscious of, our intentions, that's just the surface and skin.
So the morality of intentions is a prejudice.
A provisional one at best. We need to look at the power of the drive, not the story we tell ourselves about it.
This is a brutal landscape, and it brings us to the person who can actually live in it, the free spirit. How does this person handle knowledge if truth itself is suspect?
Well, the free spirit gets the paradox. They understand that the will to knowledge is built on something much stronger. The will to ignorance, to the uncertain, to the untrue.
We need ignorance to live.
To have any gaiety of life, yes. A little bit of illusion makes life bearable, even joyful.
And this free spirit, they're not a preacher, are they? They're not trying to spread this truth to the masses.
Oh, absolutely not. That's the opposite of what they do. He says the true philosopher must flee into concealment and use masks and subtlety. He warns them against seeking martyrdom for truth, which he says stupefies, animalizes, and brutalizes.
Be misunderstood. Be a little feared, even.
Exactly. Which gets to his idea of two kinds of truth. The exoteric versus the esoteric.
The common truth versus the hidden one.
Right. The exoteric view is from below. It's the easy morality for the herd. The esoteric view is from down from above. And he's clear that the virtues of the common person, like pity or equality, could be vices and weaknesses in a philosopher.
Which is where he says, books for all the world are always foul-smelling books.
If everyone can understand it and agree with it, it's probably worthless.
So what's the dominant foul-smelling morality of his time that he sees as the biggest threat?
It's the democratic movement. All the talk of equality of rights and sympathy for all that suffers. He sees these so-called free spirits as just slaves to democratic tastes.
And their goal is?
The universal green pasture happiness of the herd. Comfort, safety, no more danger.
Which for Nietzsche is the path to mediocrity, the shrinking of humanity.
It's the exact opposite of the conditions that he thinks make humans great. He says man grew most vigorously under hardness, forcefulness, slavery, danger. Those are the things that enhance the will to power.
So who leads the charge against this?
Yeah.
This brings us to his final, really compelling vision, the philosophers of the future.
Yes, the versucher. The attempters or experimenters. They are the ones who reject the bad taste of wanting to agree with many.
They aren't just commentators, they're creators.
They're commanders and lawgivers. Their knowledge isn't passive, it's an act of creation. For them, he says, their will to truth is will to power.
They have to be solitary, they have to be strong, they have to be the man beyond good and evil.
They have to bear the burden of creating new values in a world where all the old ones have been exposed as prejudices.
It's a staggering demand. To move past everything, opposites, causality, universal morality, and just embrace drive, power, and creation. A total revolution in what it means to be human.
It's an incredibly demanding philosophy, and it really challenges you, the listener, to look at your own deepest values and ask, are these my values? Or are they just the comforting prejudices of the herd? It asks if you're willing to become something a little more dangerous.
To wrap this up, let's leave our listeners with one final thought from Nietzsche, one that really captures how hard it is to grasp these kinds of ideas. He wrote, "The greatest events and thoughts. The greatest thoughts, however, are the greatest events, or longest in being comprehended."
The generations which are contemporary with them do not experience such events. They live past them.
That's the perfect place to end. It asks you to wonder, what fundamental thought, what great event in thinking is happening right now that you might be living past?
What radical idea are you currently dismissing simply because it challenges the comfort of your own foundational assumptions?